Sheriff's office, open the door. Step out.
Hey guys, retired Lieutenant Todd Heaton here with Humilitas First. In part 1, I talked about what position I like and I offered some reasons why I didn't like other positions. So I'm going to begin here by finishing up on that. Where's my escape? For a police officer in this kind of situation, initiative, what is it? Well, it's the power or opportunity to act or take charge before others do. But acting first, it's not a guarantee that you're going to win the fight. Many other factors come into play, like your adversary, they get a vote. How strong is their will? Factors like relative superiority. Were you able to achieve it and maintain it until you get the win? Factors like timing. The way a civilian handles a robbery and the way a police officer handles a person holding a firearm in their hand under tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving circumstances, well, those are different. And those differences have to do with things like intent or motive and principles like surprise. How to regain surprise and then apply speed and violence of action. Surprise, speed, and violence of action. That's an important principle. In this kind of scenario, the person who opens the door, he has initiative, the acting first to open the door, and surprise built in. The opening of the door, you can think of it like a jack-in-the-box. The vast majority of time, it's an okay surprise. It's a non-violent surprise. The person is not holding a gun in their hand. They're not shooting through the door. But then there are those lower percentage, higher consequence, terrifying surprises. To try to go back the way that this officer came is a bad idea. That is a long, fatal funnel. Every situation is going to be a little bit different. So that's where it pays to learn the underlying fundamental principles, whether we're talking about law enforcement or for civilian self-defense. So with this particular violent problem, I like the stairwell to the left for an escape. Why? When you lose surprise, you're left with only speed and violence of action, which is what happened here. In law enforcement, we called violence of action use of force. Those terms are interchangeable. So if I need to regain surprise, how am I going to reset his loop, as it were? First and foremost, I need to do something least expected. In this case, I can stack this blind corner, and now he's going to have to advance and reacquire his target if this is a gunfight. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. If I can solve the problem from this position, then that's what I'm going to do. With that said, once I step past that blind corner, I know precisely the corner that he has to round. I know exactly where he's going to appear. Also, I can change levels. So I can go up or down the stairwell or straight back into that corner. What I'm doing is I'm restacking a few milliseconds in my direction, forcing him back to the beginning of an OODA loop where he has to look for me. I know where he's going to appear. Consider how close this blind corner is. If the fight isn't going my way, look how quickly I can stack that blind corner. On the other hand, if I were to perform a retreating bill drill down this long fatal funnel, look how far back I'm going to have to go to get to my next blind corner. It's more likely my violent problem, it's going to get solved either because I've won the fight or I'm down on the ground dying. To stack one, or even better yet, two blind corners, that's going to let you set a hasty counter ambush to stop the unjust threat that's advancing against you. It's a better defensible position. It's not an escape in the sense that we're leaving to go get dinner. Now, maybe this is the only viable option due to, some particular apartment or motel. Then just do the best you can. Back in the early 1990s, that's when I began my police career. The single biggest error in my early formation as a police officer was firearms and tactical instructors explaining when a bad guy begins to raise his firearm pointed in your direction or the direction of another innocent, it's at that point that you should begin shooting him in order to stop the threat. Back then, I did not have any point of reference. I did not yet understand the parameters of action beating reaction. That's a principle. Arguably, that is the most important principle of this entire discussion. In the early 90s, law enforcement, we were limited to dash camera videos to study. to figure out how the bad guy was getting over on the good guys. We did not have awesome free software editors like Shotcut that we could just input the video and then set a timer wherever we wanted. So I don't think the instructors knew any better. I think that they most likely were just regurgitating what they've been taught by the instructors that they were raised by. But it's a gross error. This is a video from a recent search warrant that happened in Baton Rouge. In this example, 2 members of law enforcement were shot, one in his ballistic vest and the other in his lower abdomen. The video that was released on this is very limited, and it did not show all of the gunshots that the bad guy nor that the good guys fired. What it did give us was the surprise, that first image, and it showed us the first shot fired. So from the moment the officer can see the image, man with the gun in his hand, pointed down at the ground, slightly back, that's the image. How long does it take the unjust aggressor to raise the gun and get his first shot off? 1/3 of 1 second, 0.33. Action beats reaction versus the reaction of the officer who is already ready up at the high ready looking into this room. If we go back to Airman Roger Fortson and the internal affairs findings, well, Deputy Eddie Duran reportedly stated or admitted when asked that he could see the face of the rear sights, which indicated that the civilian's firearm was pointed slightly to the rear. In my opinion, that's very similar to what we're seeing here upon the initial breach of this door. So just how long does it take a man to move a firearm from slightly rear to neutral? We can see here by going frame to frame, it's 0.03 or 3/100ths of 1 second. When an innocent person, here we have 2 members of law enforcement, when an innocent person has their firearm at the high ready, he's looking over his sights, looking into the room, getting that first look. When he sees this image, this man squared up with him with the pistol in his hand, he's expecting to see this. The door was locked. That's why they had to kick it. So this shouldn't be a surprise. He should be expecting to see this. So we see his trigger finger is still indexed, his head's still up. So it's somewhere between 1/10 and 2/10 of a second that we're going to begin to see the officer start to raise his gun. You're going to see his muzzle start rising. So that's a response, but the total response time to first shot, even at the high ready, we don't even see it. But he's getting very close when he gets at a 1/2 second. To me, it looks like at a 1/2 second, his finger is inside the trigger guard, and between a 1/2 second and 0.56, you see his head significantly drop down into his sights. So total response time also is going to depend upon where are you in the process of dealing with this unjust threat. And then that matters as it relates to where is your adversary.
Sheriff's office, open the door!
The door opens, the officer's hands, they're empty. He doesn't have a firearm in his hands. Mr. Fortson, he holds a firearm in his hand. Mr. Fortson is way ahead as it relates to the process of drawing a firearm. If he decides to raise his gun and shoot the officer who's just slightly outside of arm's reach, that's going to take him about 1/4 of a second to 1/3 of a second to get his first shot off. Maybe it even takes him the 4/10 of a second like we saw in the earlier example. Those acts are all faster than the reaction time it's going to take anybody to be able to reach for the holster, draw, ready up, and send rounds. The officer is not going to be able to get his gun out and send that first round, in this case, for over a second. If you carry a firearm as a professional, like a police officer, or if you're a concealed carry guy or gal looking to defend your family, even at these extremely close distances, you owe it to the people that you protect and to yourself to do the work to develop your hard skills. Watch Humilitas First YouTube channel breakdowns to see where the limits of action beating reaction are, based upon the time that it takes a person to act from various starting positions, and then the time that it takes the op force, the good guy or the bad guy, to react to that action.